G'day, and welcome to AOS Coach. In this video, I'm going to look at the Monstrous Rampage abilities in 3rd edition Age of Sigmar that every single monster is going to get access to for free. Now, I have a saying, if it's free, it's for me. And you're going to know you're going to get access to this because each unit that has the monster keyword on its war scroll gets access to Monstrous Rampages. Now, monsters come in all shapes and sizes. They can be hero monsters like the Cities of Sigmar Free Guild General on Griffin. They can be behemoths like the Gloomspike It Mangler Squig. And in some cases, they can be your battle lines, such as the Sons of Behemat Man Crushers. So how do you get access to these Monstrous Rampages? Well, first off, they happen at the end of the charge phase. And each player can carry out one Monstrous Rampage per monster they have on the table. Now, it all starts off with the player whose turn it goes first, and the player cannot use the same Monstrous Rampage more than once per phase. So if you had two monsters going in for the charge, you wouldn't be able to use 2 Roars or 2 Stomps. You'd have to choose between one of the 4. And there are 4 available. You've got Roar, you've got Stomp, you've got Titanic Duel, and you've got Smash to Rubble. If you happen to have more than 4 monsters, unfortunately, the rest are going to miss out. So choose wisely. So let's look at each of these Monstrous Rampage options and start thinking about which of your monsters you might want to start using in which situations. So starting off with Roar. Roar allows you to pick one enemy unit within 3 inches of the model and roll a dice. On a 3+, that unit cannot issue or receive a command in the next combat phase. So this is a really high chance of going off. It's about a 67% chance, or I think it's like 2 out of 3 times. That's not going to stop you from stopping an Inspiring Presence, because Inspiring Presence, that Battle Shock immunity kicks in the Battle Shock phase, while Roar is only going to stop a unit from issuing or receiving a command in the combat phase. So it's going to be great for denying your opponent from spending a command point that they've probably been saving up to boost their attack or boost their defense of a key unit. It's going to help you stop any of the heroes from issuing a command. And some people choose some very powerful heroes that have very good command abilities that you can stop on the spot. So overall, I love Roar. I can see it being used quite often. Next up, you have Stomp, probably another one of my favorites of the 4. And Stomp allows me to pick one enemy within 3 inches of the model that's not a monster. So everyone that's not a monster. And on a 2+, that unit is going to suffer D3 mortal wounds. So a 2+ is like a very high chance. It's like 83% chance of activating Stomp, or it's like, 5 out of 6 times. So very, very good chance. It's going to help you clear chaff screens. So if a unit has a unit of 10 or a unit of 5 that are blocking off one of those critical key units, or trying to defend with multiple screens so you don't get into the juicy stuff early, those D3 mortal wounds could help you start clearing off the chaff, or it actually might help you pile in and use some of those 2 or 3 inch attacks that your monsters will often have to go in and hit those juicier targets. And the beautiful thing as well, on top of the fact that you're doing mortal wounds, is you're reducing the amount of enemy models that can come in and attack you back. So overall, another one that I think is going to be very, very popular. Titanic Duel allows you to pick one enemy monster within 3 inches of this model. You get to add +1 to the hit rolls for the attacks made by this model, so long as it targets an enemy monster. And that happens until the end of the combat phase. So really, we talked about Stomp only benefiting when you're not fighting a monster. This Titanic Duel is going to help you when you do fight monsters. And when you go in, you're really going monster hunting. So don't attack unless you really have to any non-monsters, because you're going to lose that buff. You'll want to fight with your monster first so that, with all of the boosts on your monster, you can do enough damage to the enemy monster that will significantly degrade their damage profile so that they lose attacks, they lose damage, they lose rend, depending on what monster you're fighting, so that they're much weaker. And then when they fight you back, their punch is not nearly as bad as what you punch them. And hopefully with enough damage and enough boosts, especially if you can get another command ability from a leader in range, you might even be able to kill that enemy monster. The last of the four is Smash to Rubble, and this one's a really fascinating one. It's certainly more situational, but it allows you to pick one faction terrain feature or a defensible terrain feature within 3 inches of this model and roll a dice. On a 3+, that terrain feature is demolished if it was defensible, and the scenery rules on the War Scroll can't be used for the rest of the battle. So if you're up against a faction terrain, let's say the ones that are a bit more aggressive compared to some of the others, let's say your Ossiarch Bone Reaper, Bone Tide Nexus, your Ideneth Deepkin boat. There are a couple of terrain pieces that people will deploy much further up compared to, let's say, the Herdstone or the Loon Shrine, which is usually as deep into the enemy deployment as possible. But if you can get access to a terrain piece, you'll be able to smash it and stop them. And there's so many great benefits, whether it's, the OBR piece of terrain can cause a -1 to hit or a -1 to casting. The Loon Shrine, for example, brings back models for the Gloomspite Gits. Things like the Charnel Throne from the Flesh Eater Courts allows them to summon or use a summoning ability for no command points. So if you can get into faction terrain, this is worth its weight in gold. However, some of them are easier to get into than others. So as I mentioned, very situational. If you do happen to come against defensible terrain, and not every piece of terrain is defensible, you will really deny your opponent from gaining their -1 to hit and their +1 to armor save roll if their unit is hiding in a garrison. So, and then also on top of that, which is really great, is if there is a unit hiding in garrison and you do smash that piece of terrain, the opponent for that unit has to roll 1 dice for every model in the garrison. And on a roll of a 1, that model is slain. So you could actually get a few additional models slain simply by rolling a 3+ before you start the combat sequence. So again, really good, but it's situational. So I previously spoke in another video about the value of monsters, and I mentioned things like the fact that, monsters will count as 5 models towards the objective. If your sons or your ogres, you'll count as more. If your monster is a hero, you're also going to gain access to the heroic actions. When I look at some of these, and let's say I've only got 2 monsters or 1 monster, the ones that are my personal favorite or the ones that I'll go to initially will always be Roar or Stomp. Being able to do some mortal wounds on a unit is always going to be good and start the party before I start the attack sequence. Or being able to stop a unit from issuing or receiving. I think Roar is going to be a very, very popular one. I really do like Roar. Things like Titanic Duel and Smash to Rubble are really good, but they are situational. So I think for me, initially, it's going to be, do I Stomp or do I Roar, unless another situation pops up. Being able to stop an opponent from using all that defense, all that attack can really increase the damage output of your monster because you're ignoring them from doing that +1 to their armor save. So, look at some of those different things that might be available to them. As I mentioned as well, things like Stomp allows me to, hopefully with some smart positioning or some smart decisions on which units I attack and then Stomp, I can use my monsters who normally have at least a 2-inch or a 3-inch attack to be able to then pile in and not having to worry about coherency because a monster is normally a single model. I can then pile in and use that 2-inch or 3-inch range, depending on if my opponent has screened appropriately. But if they've left a support hero within range of a unit, I might be able to use that 2 or 3-inch attack to then shut down a hero, a support piece that would then start to help collapse that enemy. And, if not, start clearing off the chaff that might be holding an objective. But I would love to hear from you at this point. What is your favorite monstrous rampages? Is it much like me? Is it Stomp and Roar? Do you prefer Roar first? And I've seen a lot of people use Roar because the ability to shut down a command point, especially when you're not spending your command points and an opponent might be saving up 2 or 3 to start issuing around the charge and then around combat. Stopping them from using a CP can be really powerful. But do you maybe find some more value in Titanic Duel? I imagine that we're in that season of monsters, and there's going to be a lot more monsters that we probably saw in Age of Sigmar 2 for a number of reasons. So maybe Titanic Duel isn't as situational as I keep talking about. If people are taking 2 or 3 monsters to get that additional grand strategy or battle tactics, maybe Titanic Duel is going to be worth more. Let me know. Let me know where you're at, what you're thinking. I'll be curious to hear which ones you're finding more value in. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so link is down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more 6s.